All right, let's call this meeting of the Ethics and Election Committee to order. It's about 10 minutes after noon here on August 28th. And I guess we'll do some introductions, starting over here on my left.
Austin Quinn Davidson. James Allerton. Crystal Kennedy.
Pete Peterson.
John Weddleton.
Dennis Wheeler with Resource Data.
Matt Freeman, myself.
Eugene Thompson.
Eugene Cole-Haven.
And Barbara Jones, Municipal Clerk.
All right, fantastic. Well, I think the first thing we are going to do today is change the order of the day from our agenda. I'd like to move item C under old business ahead of item A under new business. Would anyone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is anyone opposed to doing that? Okay, fantastic. Well then, let's get Dennis Wheeler up here to give us a report on some things that he's been working on in service area boundaries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the vote by mail project, we need to be able to identify very specifically the resident address of voters to make sure that they get the right ballot associated with their precinct, their service areas, their assembly district, and so on. In that process, we've made some enhancements with the GIS work that the Muni provides to help us in mapping out those addresses. And in that process, we've discovered a number of discrepancies. My short-term project was to try to identify those to the best of our ability and try to identify what the discrepancies might be relative to precinct boundaries, assembly district boundaries, and service area boundaries. What you have in your packet today is 3 color maps that are a representative sampling of that project. We have identified just under 30 different areas where these discrepancies, if they can be reconciled, should be to improve the efficiencies in the vote by mail process so the clerk can make sure that the right ballots are being delivered to the voters. At this point, we've identified them, we've indicated some possible solutions for them, and we have provided these to the GIS team, Tim Miller's group, who provide a lot of great election support, as well as to Bill Falsey and Dean Gates, who have an interest in this, just because lawyers like to get interested in these interesting land issues and how you resolve them. We're hoping that most of these could be resolved administratively, which means that there may be some mapping errors, or it may be that with the improved technologies related to GIS mapping, that these can be refined and corrected, so that there isn't a need to do anything more formal other than to acknowledge that these corrections are being made. There may be some that would require some sort of more high-level governmental fix, either working with the state when they do their redistricting to modify precinct boundaries, or to work with this body regarding service areas and service area residents who are required or allowed the opportunity to vote on any amendment to their boundaries. So phase 2, I guess I'll call it, would be to have GIS look at their mapping and look at historical data and consult with Bill and Dean as needed to identify administrative changes, make those, and then look at what's remaining and decide which ones might be the most important in terms of priority. Try to get those resolved if there's a desire to do so with this body or with the state or with service area voters. If you have any questions about the mapping piece, I'd be happy to try to answer those. Otherwise, I'm going to slide out of here and keep my consultant time to a minimum.
Any questions for Mr. Wheeler? John? Mr. Wheeler?
I must have been at one of these meetings before we talked about this. I don't remember the answer, but why do we care about precincts anymore? Vote by mail, who cares?
We did talk about it through the chair. The decision at the time that we implemented vote by mail was that the electorate and the candidates were all used to precinct-based elections with respect to how they looked at demographic data, how they looked at reporting election results, and so forth. So we set up the system to do precinct-based voting. So the precinct information is available to the general public during the course of the election to report results and report who's voted within the precinct as the election progresses. Now, having said that, I have mentioned in the past that we have the capability to change that, but we haven't yet implemented that absent further direction. That's a new way that the city wants to go with respect to its elections.
Right, it makes just, for some historical convenience, I could not tell you what precinct I'm in, never could in my life, couldn't care less. And I think I'm a politician now, couldn't care less. You know, and I would not want any burden on, but if you're in the fire service area or not, that's a big deal, it goes to a vote. And if you're in the park service area or not, it goes to a vote to change. So those are comprehensive precincts. I wouldn't do any change to do that. You know, we really, what benefit is there? You guys are politicians. Is there a benefit
I mean,
in
there's,
precinct data? Who cares?
yes,
Ms. Quinn
for
Davidson?
campaigns there are, but I don't think that's relevant here, but if that's what you're asking about.
Oops.
Ms. Jones?
Through the chair, I will mention to you, some of these are precinct errors, but if you look at page 2, page 2 is not a precinct error. You can see that we have Assembly District 2 and Assembly District 5 that are problematic for us. And this would be problematic for our voters when they're voting in a state election. And we just think this is important to figure out, does our GIS mapping have these people in the wrong place, or does the state? And then if you look on the next page, we have a couple of fire service issues where the fire service and road boundaries, again, they're not aligned. And right now, all of our reporting is up to precinct, but the dilemma is that we need to add more ballot styles. And you can see each one of these 20, 30 changes is an additional ballot style or more. We already have 176, and it would add more, the 30 more. And the problem with that is you can look at some of these areas and they're so small that it could be that one, maybe two people live in these areas, and then we have a ballot style for one or two people, which means that you can tell how people voted. And that's why we want this to be corrected. There's a couple of other bizarre ones, and if you look at the very first page, you can see, I believe this is, we have a different alignment on the ocean for fire, for ARTSA. They have just different, we don't know if they have different legal descriptions or if somebody just mapped them that way. We're not doing separate ballot styles for that, but the legal, the mapping should be the same, is what we're asking.
Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question is, I'm not real clear on exactly what kind of legal constrictions we have here, because it seems to me that we are we, this body here, the assembly, or the municipality as a whole, can we redraw precinct boundaries, or is that all actually a state function? And if it is, then the other idea of trying to redraw some of these lines around our service area, we can't do that either because these are voted service areas. So how do we actually move forward with trying to reconcile these different boundaries?
Through the chair, with respect to precincts, those are definitely state-driven boundaries.
Mhm.
What's interesting about precincts, something that I wasn't aware of until I got into this project some years ago, and that is they tend to use the center line of streets to identify points instead of the property boundaries that are platted. It may be that we can work with them to adjust that process, but I suspect what's really going to need to happen, if the decision is that we want to try to change precinct boundaries, is to do that through the redistricting process and fix those as we go through that process. So that would be more of a long-term approach, presuming this body wants to stick with precinct-based voting. With respect to things that the assembly can do versus the voters in a specific service area, it would depend on the nature of the service area. Some require, through state law changes that were done within the last 15 years or so, a vote to change a boundary versus whether or not the assembly can do something because it's not really an expansion into another service area or creation of a new service area, it's just an adjustment of the boundary. That all has to be worked out, and that would be subject to legal opinion from the municipal attorney's office as to whether we can do those, right? So if we can without a vote, then we will, or I would recommend that we do that. If it requires a vote, then we can have a further conversation about whether that's worth the cost to put them on the ballot for that process.
So we just need to decide which path and then get started on that process with whatever, whether it's going through the state or going to do it through the voters.
Ms. Jones?
Through the chair, there's a preliminary step, which is where we're at. And the preliminary step that Dennis explained is we're just trying to see if there's an administrative fix. Did someone 20, 30, even 10 years ago just misread the legal description for the boundary of the service area or of something else? Is the ridge on the top correctly mapped of that mountain where this service area goes? It's just all administrative right now. We hope that we're gonna, I think there's one, I was looking for a picture of it. I think this is my vacuum cleaner, that's what I call it right here. But that vacuum cleaner, there's another part of it that's just totally misaligned. It just goes up through the mountains off to Eagle River. And ours goes, it has a little jog like this. And GIS's go just straight over. There's no reason we would have all of these jogs in this map. There's something misaligned. So we think we can figure a lot of these just administratively.
Well, and part of this, I think, is the fact that we can do mapping more effectively and accurately now than they probably were able to do 20 or 30 or definitely 40 years ago. And so we're hoping maybe to make some of these changes administratively, just because when you look at the map, you can tell that, well, they were trying to do that line there, but they just missed it a little bit, type of a thing. And so I think that's what we're looking at.
Through the chair, thanks.
Ms. Kennedy?
Okay, well, and I understand that, and it looked like that might be a simpler thing in some of these areas, but others look pretty convoluted. And don't we also have a discrepancy over boundaries out through Eklutna, back basically out in the Eklutna area? Wasn't there some other boundary discrepancies out there that weren't quite aligned? Because I guess I had looked at a map earlier that I thought had some areas up there. And maybe it doesn't matter because maybe really nobody lives there or something, but property boundary wise it might be.
Through the chair, there are some with respect to, for example, the Chugach Fire Service Area versus Anchorage Fire Service Area, Eagle River Rural Road Service Area versus Subursa, Eagle River Streetlight Service Area. There's definitely some on the list that are in that general area.
Okay, well, we just don't have a map.
I just brought
that.
3 as a representative.
Perfect, okay, I can understand that. Thank you, okay.
All right, any additional questions or comments before Mr. Weaver departs? Okay, well, thank you, Dennis. And let's go back up to new business item A, the vacancy ordinance. And we're going to be talking about ranked choice voting. We have an S version here.
Yeah. Do you want me to give a
Ms.
little
Davidson.
introduction? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as you know, Barbara and Dean and I have been working on this for months and months, and then John and Meg and I met a couple times in the last few weeks to try to come up with some version of what Matt presented to us at a work session. So what we came up with, I sent an email to Dean, and he then drafted the S version that you see here. Then Matt, let me see, does this one have the red? Matt's additions, John ran it by Matt, and his additions are those in red. So I don't know how we want to start if we just want to work through the sections, or if Dean wants to give us an intro, and he essentially just wrote what I asked him to write, but what would be most useful? Should we just run through it?
Well, if we could, Mr. Gates, do you want to give us an introduction to this?
Well, not necessarily. I think that we have looked at this before. I don't really know the S version changes, which are on page 5. There's some text in red, but I think I would just note that on subsection D, E, and F are all in the language for the S version. It's the bracketed language on page 6, starting at line 44. That's language that was in our original code. So, and I guess, I'm sorry, some of this isn't actually non.
Why don't, do you want me, Dean, to just, excuse me,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chairman,
Mr.
go ahead,
Chairman.
thank you.
Yes.
Would you like me to just run through what I asked you to do, and then we can kind of get in, John and Megan can weigh in as well, and we can just get into sort of the meat of it?
Yes.
And then we can hone in on the language. Okay, so what I had asked is, starting with D and E, and then you'll see there's some additional language added, that this be the general concept. This is what I sent Dean an email. So after the first round of voting, the lowest vote-getting applicant, or applicants, if they are tied, shall be eliminated. So, if you have 8 people running and 2 people got 0 and everyone else got something, 1 through however many votes, you eliminate the people with 0. Then you can debate and have discussion again. Then you vote again and do the same thing. So the idea is you're trying to narrow it down to who are the people that the most people are interested in appointing. So you keep doing this until you get, we thought it made sense, until you get 3 applicants remaining. If you have 3 or more applicants, you can do a ranked choice voting process. If you have 2 or fewer, you can't. So we thought there needed to be at least 3. But we didn't want to go on forever. So we thought, well, we'll go on for 3 rounds, and then we'll take what we have left and we'll do the ranked choice from there. So at that point, we would have Barbara distribute a ballot with just the remaining applicants' names on it. So it might be 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. And each person votes for their first, or his or her first, second, and third choice. And then the clerk gathers the ballots, and then we go through the process that's articulated here in the code. So and you guys will have to remind me, so if one person gets a majority, one person gets majority of the assembly, right? So if there are 10 people voting, assume there's 1 person, 1 seat vacant. If someone gets 6 votes, it's over. If there's a tie, that's when the ranked choice comes in. So if there's a tie for the first, the clerk eliminates all the non-tied
Or
candidates.
not necessarily a tie, right?
You don't have to have a tie.
4-4-2, right?
A tie for first.
Or 4.
Yeah, for,
It would have to be, you could have 4, 3, and 3.
you could, yeah. So, and we
And this
can
is
get to
after
that.
the first 3 ballots have already taken place when this
Yes.
kicks in, right?
Yep, and so now we're narrowed down to sort of the best or the most desirable candidates. Maybe they're not the best, but everyone thinks they are. And then we do the ranked choice. So if there's a tie, you eliminate all the non-tie candidates. So if it were 4-4-2, you eliminate number 2. And then you redistribute the votes for that number 2, and Matt, I'll let you then say about your changes. Redistribute the votes for those people who voted for first place, for the folks who got 2. There are 2 votes there. You look at who they voted for second place and plug that in to one of the remaining people. It has to be one of the remaining people, right? Because those are the remaining people left. If there's still a tie, then you would go to the third place. But the idea is that either of those would help you understand who's left has the most support from the most members of the body. If there's not a tie, but so Forrest, when we talked about this last time, your concern was this might allow someone, I mean, say you have 4-4-2, the 2 falls off, and those 2 votes go to the 2 candidates, maybe it becomes 6-4, or 6-4, right? From the second place vote, it goes to one of the other candidates. We'll do a practice round, so it makes sense. Your concern was, well, not, only 4 members voted for that person who's going to win as their first choice. And that's not a majority. But our view is, it's actually a majority of the people on the body want that person over the other candidates to be selected. So anyway, that we can do a practice round. It might help. Matt has since so I emailed that. Is that accurately represent? Is there anything to add?
I would just add on that last point to Forrest that this doesn't kick in until after 3 rounds. So we've had lots of opportunity to just get to the majority in the traditional way with debate and traditional voting methods. So,
Yeah.
That was Mrs. Alatel.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Do we have additional questions, or did we want Matt to talk about ranked choice voting, Mr. Weddleton?
Kind of on a broader thing, if you read this, we're really just looking at section 5, right? Okay. So A is Barbara distributes a list with all the applicants' names. B says the assembly votes for 1 applicant. 1. Okay. C, after we voted, goes back to Barbara, she tallies it up. Okay, then we hit section D, and all of a sudden we're talking ranked choice, which requires we vote for each of them. And it doesn't, the transition is lost here. Because initially we just check 1, she's got that. Then we say, okay, D, majority has to, there has to be a majority for something further we get voted in. If no majority is cast, now it talks about the applicant receiving the lowest number of votes, but we haven't redistributed. We have to redistribute the ballots and say, okay, everybody ranked them at this point. We haven't done
No,
that.
not yet,
Nope.
because you keep going, you're gonna go through, this is Ms. Salatel, through 2 more rounds of the traditional voting method before we get.
Oh, and we're knocking people off.
Yeah, we're
prior.
still at the
Oh,
top
okay.
portion of that.
Okay, so this is not quite ranked choice. Okay, I remember.
Ranked choice doesn't kick in until the 4th time around.
Okay, so then we go to E. Okay, 3 rounds, okay.
So
Okay,
E,
no, I got you, I'm sorry.
yeah, it describes
Thank
the
you.
process for distributing the ballot. This is Austin, distributing the ballot and getting a ranked choice thing going.
Okay. Mr. Gibbs?
Just to clarify, then you mentioned red and D, the intent is if the first, second, or third round, there is 6 votes or more majority, then that's just, isn't even at all, like,
Yes.
to them.
Right.
Yeah, and if I could follow up on that.
Ms. Quinn
Mr.
Davidson?
Thank you. Yeah, and the idea being, as Meg said, is that, hopefully we just have a majority. But if we don't, we're either gonna flip a coin or keep voting, and keep voting, or we're gonna say, well, some people, I mean, there are 10 of us here, and really 7 people like this person a lot, 3 people like this, so, or, maybe those numbers don't line up. But it's a way to, instead of just flipping a coin and making it random, to take into account the members' second and third choices.
Right. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm going back to the idea of being at the beginning, the first vote. The first time we all get to vote, we only get 1 vote. That's when your pool of applicants is the largest. And that's when you actually probably have 2 or 3 or 4 people that you think would be, that you would you'd like to appoint. But you only get the chance to vote for 1. And technically, we could have 11 people after the first round. But at that point, okay, now there's 11 different people, but I've only picked 1 that I would consider voting for. If my 1 choice goes away, now I've got to settle for, well, maybe I like so-and-so's choice, or maybe I like, maybe I know, anyway. So to me, it's almost like we do it backwards. Because if I have a whole pool of candidates to choose from, I might want to pick my top 2 or 3 preferences right off the bat. But I don't have the ability to do that. Instead, I only get to pick one, and if my one has 1 vote and somebody else's has 2 or 3 or whatever, then that's my option now. So now I'm kind of torn with all this, this whole idea about how to really move forward with this idea, because, this would never, in the real world, or so, so to speak, if you were going out to vote, you would probably never have 11 candidates on a ballot, or 20 candidates on a ballot. You might only have 2 or 3 to begin with, which kind of makes that idea of picking one easier. But when you've got a big pool of applicants, and you get one choice out of those 25 people, we had 36 people one time that came for a position in the Anchorage School Board. So anyway, kind of back to that whole idea about how to really make sure that you're picking in this ranking idea, that you're really choosing a majority of who everybody is really supporting, because in one fell swoop you could get rid of a huge number of people and now be stuck with somebody that you really not even interested in. So anyway, does that make sense?
Ms. Sullivan?
It does make sense. I see, but I think what's there that you get the opportunity to do is we're looking at that kind of having to pick one of the candidates 3 times with debate and discussion. So you get that opportunity to make your case for who you like to your colleagues. And the idea is to be, and it's always easier when we kind of play it out with a slate of candidates, but if there are 36 candidates, we have to find some way to winnow them down. And there will be some who get 0 votes, and so those would be the first to go. So there wouldn't be anyone who didn't have some support moving on to the next round, and then you would be getting into the merits of those who had support moving into the second round. Because I think that allows us to go because once you get to ranked choice voting, I think we have to have already had an opportunity to debate the merits of the candidates, I think, in a way that we can start to winnow down the field and then turn to ranked choice. If we just rank 36 individuals, we don't know why people have preferred so-and-so over so-and-so. So I think it was kind of trying to balance the traditional means that the body makes decisions is through debate and discussion with finally getting to an ultimate decision.
Well, and the reason this has come about is because we were trying to appoint someone to fill a vacancy in West Anchorage, and we had 2 really, really good candidates. And the vote was tied on numerous occasions. But when we tried to fill a vacancy for Eagle River, there were a number of candidates, but we filled that vacancy on the first vote. So it's hard to project into the future whether the large number of candidates is going to cause many more ballots, or whether just having 2 candidates is going to cause many more ballots. And so what we're doing is we're saying, well, we'll go with the traditional way that we've been filling them all along for the first 3 times that we vote to fill the vacancy. And then if that hasn't worked, then we'll go to the new ranked choice voting. And I myself think that the chances of having to use this ranked choice voting are probably fairly small. Just in my opinion. What do you think about that, Ms. Davidson?
Yeah, I think so too, Mr. Peterson. And just to Crystal's point, the idea is that the people who are left that we all need to rank are the top candidates. So they might not be everyone you wanted to vote for, but they're the ones who got the most first place picks. And so I think that's how I look at it, is it's narrowing down. Like Meg said, people are going to have to come off of there somehow, and they're going to be the people who didn't get any first choice picks.
Mr. Dunbar?
Well, I wanted to ask a question of the clerk. I know that we are required to vote on things that are before us. There's no abstention option. Is that the case for this? Can you just not fill out a ballot, or 000 if you're ranking them?
Mr. Chair, that has happened before in assembly reorganization.
Yeah.
There was a reorg and the votes were 5-5 and one person didn't vote. And at the next meeting, the municipal attorney, and I'm not sure if Dean was assembly counsel then, but the members were ordered to vote. So it was, and then it was resolved. So if, in my opinion, if that was the case with an assembly reorganization, I think that would be the case with assembly filling a vacancy.
But
The different question you're asking is, you have to vote, do you have to rank choice vote? I think that's enough of a distinction that I think I'd have to defer to legal.
so if I were in Crystal's hypothetical shoes, we'd gotten to the ranked choice portion, there were 3 candidates I felt were unacceptable.
Oh.
Because or even before we got there, if we got to, I guess it's even more important if we get to we winnowed down to 3, but there's nobody I accept. In ranked choice, I can just write 3-3-3.
But that's the same as not voting for, I mean,
Suing. I mean, I don't know, like, if there are 3 people that I cannot
but it's
accept.
equal. I mean, you're just making it equal, so you might as well not vote. This is Austin.
Right, but
So
she's
who
saying
cares?
I legally have to vote, but do
Yeah.
I legally have to rank one of them as 1? I don't think the charter is specific to that. I don't think there's anything requiring me to say, you must rank people. I just vote 3 on all of them.
And so
Whatever.
this doesn't require a charter change, is that correct?
Correct.
To-
No, this is an interpretation, and that would be something I would leave the attorneys to interpret for you.
Okay, Mr. Salazar?
Thank you. Your vote, Mr. Dunbar, would have led to the 3 remaining candidates. I don't think you could have been on the losing side of all of that to have one of those 3 candidates remaining. You would have had to have affirmatively probably voted for one at some point.
Depends on the
Depending how-
political breakdown of.
Well, but I think
who
it would
the
be very
candidates are.
rare that that situation might occur. I don't know. I would need someone to run the algorithm, but.
Do you want to practice, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair?
I think we
And
could.
I
You wanna
have,
say
let's see,
anything
1,
before
2,
we
3, 4.
Let's hear from Matt, as long as we've
Oh,
got him
Matt.
here, and then we can maybe do a practice round, just for an example. Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you. I want to clarify 2 things. On the document you guys have on page 5, all the red edits are things I added. And then on page 5, lines 44 to 47, I crossed out. Just so you know what was previously crossed out before I changed this document. So lines 44 to 47 on page 5, I crossed out. And then on page 6, I crossed out lines 6 through 17.
Could you maybe just go through all your changes and
Yeah.
describe why?
Yes. So when I first got this, the first one, my red under on line E, I noticed that that was crossed out previously, that a majority was required to appoint applicant to the assembly, so I just re-added that in right off the bat. So it's like an if statement, so if there's no majority, then we go into this process, just to clarify that. And then subsection I, that was just basically making sure the mechanics worked in order. So basically, the ballots distributed, and whoever has the lowest votes eliminated. And then the clerk would look at the next choice for that assembly member that voted, and just redistribute the vote to that person, and so on until there's only 2 candidates left. The next 3, subsection I, these are just what-if scenarios. So subsection I is if there's a tie, say between, if you got a 4-3-3 scenario, you look at the 2 people with 3, since you can't eliminate one, you look at how many of them got the next ranked vote, so you prefer them second. So if you have 4-3-3, and then one of those 3s, 2 people voted for them second place, and 1 voted for the other one second place, you would go with the one that got 2 votes and eliminate the one we got 1. That's just to clarify tie.
Can I ask a question?
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
You're agreeing with what I said, you're just rewording it.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm just fixing so the mechanics line up.
Cool.
With what you want. Subsection I is, basically, if there's 4 candidates, your first choice could be number 3. So we're just gonna do them in order. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Your fourth choice vote could be number 3, but candidate number 4 is eliminated. It's your second choice. But since they're eliminated first, when your third place choice gets eliminated, number 2 is already gone, meaning your vote would go to your third place choice. Since you can't distribute a vote to someone that was previously eliminated, that just means it goes to your third place vote.
Ms. Quinn-Davidson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're saying your vote for that first round of the ranked choice, or you're saying not until you incorporate third place votes?
Second place votes.
But not, you wouldn't, I think this is gonna be hard to talk about without an example, but.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
sweet.
you have 4 candidates. We're calling 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order of rank. You vote for the third candidate as your first choice, and the fourth person's eliminated, except the least amount of votes, and they get redistributed. And your candidate's still in last place, your first place vote, and your second place vote was a candidate that was previously eliminated, so you can't redistribute your vote
Yes.
to number 4. So you look at your ranking and redistribute your vote to your third, because they're still.
But in the round where second place are considered, or not until third place are considered, because it was your third place vote? Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be the second round. Second round.
Ms. Alto?
Thank you. I have a couple of, so in subsection 2, I get, that kind of walks us through all the mechanics of the redistribution of votes, if I understand correctly. So 1, I would say should be distributed instead of the word used. Then I wonder, then do we need subsection 3 and 4, or I and I below? Because that seems to be somewhat redundant if really the entire thing is taken care of in the previous subsection. Because that's how I read subsection little 2 there, is to kind of walk us through the whole process. And then this other portion is really just over-explanatory and redundant, especially if we take the word used out and use distributed.
Yes. These subsection 3 and 4 essentially are there because in the scenario, if you need to break a tie, that was the whole purpose of rewriting this section, is if you have a 4-3-3, how do you decide between the 2 3s on the bottom?
Ms. Alto?
Thank you. But the end of your subsection 2 ends with the sentence, if there is still a tie after all ranks have been exhausted, the successful applicant shall be determined by lot. So to me, that just ends the process. That sentence you used, you successfully ended the process. And so we don't need to go any further in the ordinance. Because I look at, this is a roadmap.
I agree.
So I think at that point, we just stop. And I think what
That's
you
right.
tried to explain here is fantastic, but I think it's taken care of in the language above, quite honestly.
I see what you're saying.
So,
So, to answer your question, let's start at if there's still a tie, that would be applicable if highly unlikely. You get down to 2 candidates, that could be written better. If you get down to 2 candidates and they are tied across the board, like first rank, second rank, third rank, fourth rank votes,
I think that's what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's clear. You
Yeah.
covered it in
yeah, so if you're tied across the board, which is extremely unlikely, you would determine by a lot, which I'm not sure what that meant. That was in here originally.
Right, you flip a coin or draw a card or something like
Okay.
that.
Mr. Peterson, can I?
Ms. Quinn-Davidson?
Thank you. I don't like that phrase by lot. I asked what it meant when we were initially drafting this. I just like to say something else, because I feel like if we're trying to make the code really clear to the average person, if we want to say flip a coin, just say flip a coin, or yeah, or determined by a random,
Chance.
yeah, something like that. Like, I just feel like by law,
My card
is-
wins.
yeah, dance off. I like that. We could codify that.
Well, I mean, obviously, the state flips a coin, and it's happened on at least 2 occasions that I can think of, so.
And we could say by coin flip or other random selection process or something like that.
And so that could be an amendment that someone could add in here, or we could have that drafted in before this comes
Yeah.
before us.
We haven't introduced the S version yet, so we have
Okay.
some time, I think, to work through it.
Okay. Matt?
I was about to say, yeah, that line could be subsection 5, just to make sure everyone knows it's last. Like the last option is flipping a coin, or
Well, we're taking out 3 and 4,
you need 3 and 4.
so it could be 3. No, we don't.
You have to have 3 and 4.
I
Otherwise,
feel
you
like we're
can't.
talking in a circle.
You can't use ranked voting if you don't have 3 and 4. I can explain it if you
Can you
give the
help me?
example.
Because, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Alto?
So in subsection 2, you talk about if there continue to be ties, that the votes are redistributed. And then you just, it feels like in subsection 3 and 4, you just reiterate how they're redistributed. Do we need to get into the mechanics of how they're redistributed?
Yes. If
If
you're,
you think they need to be
sorry.
getting the mechanics of how they're redistributed, we need to revamp all of that to renumber it and reconfigure it, because if you read subsection 2, if they're tied, the third choice votes shall be redistributed, and so forth until the tie is broken. There, you have worked us through to where the tie is broken, unless you want to say redistributed in accordance with subsection little I, and IB, should be IB. Otherwise, it doesn't make sequential sense in terms of an ordinance. Because if you get us to a conclusion in a previous piece, we won't keep going.
Mr.
And I
Gates,
think-
do you have something to add?
I sort of think I understand what Mr. Farina means as to why those are needed. In the first small I, the first sentence is the clerk eliminated the applicants with the lowest number of votes. But suppose, like Ms. Kennedy's ballot ranked number 1, the person who was eliminated now after the first redistribution, and that's for first rank voting. I think that's what number 2 is trying to say. So first rank voting, someone was eliminated, and someone was still remains. That's how I understand it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Instead of just losing her first choice, because all candidates are eliminated.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
I was just gonna suggest, if it's okay with the chair, that Meg and John, if he's interested, and Dean and I work on this to get the S version done in a way. I think we all agree conceptually, so just figuring out how to word it, because I think we could burn through our remaining time, and Barbara has prepared a sample for us, and then we could practice and maybe get more into it. Would that be okay?
Right, so Ms. Kennedy, and then maybe we'll do a practice vote here so we can see how it actually works.
Real quick, just for correction purposes, the second whereas talks about seat B of Eagle River. That should be seat A. Seat B is actually downtown.
I told him yesterday
So-
about another one. I'm looking out for you, but.
Seat A?
Seat A, it was seat A.
Yeah.
They corrected it.
Well,
the
until we
other one.
rotate the single member district out.
That's a good one.
Ms. Jones, you want to distribute the sample ballots? Get to see the practicality of how this might actually work.
Okay, so I just made ballots for the last, these are just copies of the last ballot. And, I think, the copies aren't, I just want to count here. Okay, so there's 11 in a pack, and so they have the name of the assembly member down at the bottom. It was supposed to be like, 5 for Christopher Constant, 5 for, let me fix them so that they make more sense
Well,
like that.
could I
Okay,
just-
and then you're gonna be Christopher Constant.
Okay, before you start, Barbara?
Yeah.
We're not gonna have ranked choice voting with 11 people. That's not gonna happen, right?
Why?
So it's
Well,
way
I
too many.
mean,
I
no,
mean,
you'd have 3, because that's how well,
it's actually literally impossible. How many are there?
There's 11.
Because we only
So
have
the
10
first
voters.
round would get
Yeah,
six.
I think
Six
we
people.
should practice. So,
No, but we need to practice something that's actually what we
Oh,
would be doing.
okay.
So I'm sorry, but I think that 11 is literally, 11 is
5-3.
literally impossible because we only have 10 voters. Each of these people through the rounds of 3 vote, through 3 first rounds, would have had to have received a vote to stay on this list.
okay.
That is not possible. So it needs to be reduced. I think the more practical is somewhere between 3 and 5. So
Yes.
Matt's signaling 5. So can we just cross off like
The bottom five,
5 and
yeah.
then work? Okay. No
So-
offense to
so,
Bill and Matt and.
What I'm gonna try to do here is, I have a packet for each of you, and instead of making a packet for each of you, I've just got 11 packets. So these are, there's Pete, Austin,
Do you want me to be marking off the bottom ones? Or I don't know how these
so I
packets
don't
are.
have one for Chris, yeah, you guys know, just don't don't vote for the bottom ones. So, wait, where's Suzanne? These ones are all gonna get thrown away.
Oh,
So, basically, Crystal,
leave
you're
the
gonna
top
be,
5,
Crystal,
okay.
you're gonna be Suzanne. And,
it's getting very confusing.
Meg, you're gonna be Lily, all right? So,
And I'm Christopher Constant.
no, you can be Austin. Do you wanna be Austin? I have one for you.
Be fun for 5 minutes.
So go ahead and pull your one out and pass
I don't think
those
it might
down.
pull out.
Okay.
So cross off the bottom 6. So that we're left with 5, which is a more reasonable.
Okay, so we're ranking the top 5, is that what we're doing?
And if
We're
with
going
five
to-
candidates, you can get most bad scenarios.
So
to happen.
one, you're gonna get, yeah, so this is your first round ballot. So on your first round ballot, you get to vote yes.
This is not your first round ballot.
the
Your
first.
first round of ranked
It just
choice.
says Pete, do you want that?
Okay, hold on.
You want-
Oh, yeah, you're
Oh,
supposed to be
yours,
with
Pete,
Frank.
right, okay.
Who's supposed to be Christopher Constant?
Nobody,
Nobody.
he should be in there.
Oh,
Can we give Matt one?
I'll be.
This is our first ranked choice vote. So this is the 4th round of voting, perhaps.
So we're getting rid of who?
We're
Round
marking
roll
off
round.
the bottom 6. Yeah,
They didn't make the cut, let's say.
Yeah, they were eliminated in the first 3 rounds. And so now vote your choice 1 through 5 of the top 5 people.
Can I object because we crossed out my first choice?
I'm sorry.
But your first choice may not have made it in.
Yeah.
May have just
He
been on.
didn't make it in, actually.
Yeah, see?
He was my first.
Real life. So now what's all this
All
stuff?
right.
Well,
So-
these are for the second round.
We don't have a second round.
No.
So
Oh,
there,
but
yeah.
if you have a tie, there will be.
No,
we're
there
just
won't
gonna be
That's the
distributing.
whole beauty of this
Oh, okay.
process.
All right, so,
good, did you fill yours out?
okay.
No.
Yes, I brought the spreadsheets.
Sorry, Barbara, we didn't really
I can do it.
huddle up on
my
this in
head pretty
advance.
quickly.
Huh? Well,
Thank
you
you.
can do it that way, but if
Yeah.
I don't do it,
But I can help.
this is gonna be
Yeah.
a problem,
Yes.
so.
On the computer, it's a little easier, but.
Okay, I have I have it on the computer too. Do you wanna do it on the computer?
I think you should do however you want.
Yeah,
Barbara.
you can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just assist you in the way. you
Okay,
prefer.
so here is the printout of what you sent us, and here's the printout of. Oh, I lost my pen. Could I, oh, it's over there.
Why don't we, can I get a motion to extend the meeting for 10 minutes so that we can finish this?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, any objection to that? Okay, we're extending for 10 minutes.
Okay,
I'm gonna text this
Are we
right
doing Desiree?
now. Yeah,
so this is round one, right here, round one. So we need to, this is applicant, just so that we agree, this is applicant 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, correct? And then here, we're gonna have, we've got, is this assembly member 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Yes.
Okay,
I put S for C1.
okay. So now applicant. I'm gonna stick him down there, 'cause I think that might have been Austin, but, okay, so, I wanna get this right. And, Crystal, were you Suzanne LaFrance?
Yes.
Austin, were you?
I think so, yeah.
Somebody listened to the tape and was going, oh, wow, they're drinking that early in the day?
Oh, you were Christopher. Yes, okay. So,
We need a tie.
so I need you to vote?
Is there 6 or 7 including me?
There's 7 including you.
But no,
You don't need to.
we want a tie.
Okay, so now we are ready to go. So, for this one, I put, it's a 3, a 1, a 4,
Second round, right, Jones.
That's fine. and a 5. Okay,
Should, yeah. Otherwise,
so now we are back to.
So there will be no
a 2,
second round,
a 4,
yeah, because there's
a 1,
I guess the redistribution we call that the second round.
This one is
Talking
a-
redistribution, right? But up high.
They just
That's
had,
interesting,
I just went
huh?
through the two boroughs, they just had, or maybe it was the Palmer City Council, the Palmer City Council, just had their, they were like deadline for a while. Trying to fill Pete LaFrance's, Suzanne's brother moved to Switzerland.
That's right.
He was on the Palmer City Council, so they had to fill it. And there was, there was like 3-3, you know, with 2 camps. And eventually they settled on this young guy, who I don't think any of them thought would be the city councilor to start. He wasn't even in town. I trusted him on Facebook. So it's kind of funny.
It's one of those deals where when you're not there, they put you on the committee, oh, by the way, you're the chair too.
Are you aware of any local
Pete, do you know anything about this?
Not yet.
I saw that email.
The Democratic primary for president is doing.
Well, I'm already past time to complete mine, so I
What
just
do you
got.
got? Oh, for
What about
security.
sometimes
Security
security
training or something?
awareness? What is it? Is it
Oh, I got
legit?
it too, so we're.
It's a real thing, but I'm
I
not
always
gonna do it
ignore
until they like shut off
Yeah.
the computer access.
And last time they threatened to and they never did, so they taught me.
But who's it actually come from?
I don't even know.
But it is
It's
from
the
the
IT department.
Well, it's from like I think it's from a contractor. there.
Yeah. Okay.
But it is legit. I forwarded it to Amanda
Oh,
once, and she's like, yeah, they're fine.
Now what?
Okay.
Let's go across.
I might do it. We'll see. But yeah, I just certainly didn't want to open anything.
Oh, and I just put that right down
Yeah.
there. So,
Yeah, it's,
They're getting more sophisticated, so some of them kind of go,
Yeah, it's
is that?
like the Matsu Borough or Falcon Beach where they lock all our files.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just getting, it's the Wild West online out there right now. People have got this all
Well,
figured out, you know.
And especially with a site like this, you know, with a municipal, I can be a whole lot more, I think I could probably be a whole lot more discerning on my own. But some stuff, it gets like, okay, am I supposed to?
I also don't care.
Yeah.
Of course, when it's all written in Chinese, I don't.
I was on my computer and I get a message on the computer saying, well, you have an issue, you know, you need to call this security number to have, have them work on this issue, you know, have a secure thing that's, you know, like my McAfee security thing was able to solve everything in one little item. And so I'm going, okay, I'll have to do that sometime. And then 20 minutes later, my phone rings, and it's some guy going, yeah, I'm calling to do work on your computer, can you let me sign on in so I can get in there and correct that? No, I'm not gonna do that. So when I talked to him the next day, I came in and I did
I will not
hey,
park
this
on that side
happened.
anymore.
It is, yeah, that's what you should do. That's what I would have done. So.
Well, I love it, we have all, we're all Mac at my house, and I call things, yeah, your computer has the things that are really nice, great.
Yeah, it's hard when you're doing it.
There you are, but, go away. Actually, we get all the ones that, there's been a judgment against you, or how much, we're gonna, we have you're gonna get served papers today at work. Really, that's fascinating. If you don't call or do this, and both my parents and my husband's parents have gotten calls supposedly from their grandsons. Oh, Grandma, I just had this accident, I need you to send $1,000. Can you talk to this guy right here? This guy's gonna tell you where to send this money, or, give him your credit card number. 3 times my dad's been hit, 3 times. It's almost the same kind of thing.
Just
Oh, it's
reading-
now, you gotta do it right now, I need your help, don't call Dad.
Just reading an article in the AARP magazine that just came out, and they were talking about the newest scams that it's people calling to say they're from the IRS and you need to send X amount of dollars, or,
I got that one.
we're gonna close your,
I got that.
freeze your account, or all that.
Several times, yeah.
And by the way, they want you to pay them with gift cards, and, I mean,
Yeah, I'm sure the IRS really uses American
That's,
Express
you know,
gift cards.
you'd have to be,
Do you think they
you'd have to
scam
really
people
think that,
better?
well, now they've caught up to me and I guess I have to do this. It must be working, or otherwise they wouldn't be
I know,
making
right?
those calls.
Right, yeah, it just keeps
Some people are
going.
just so paranoid of the IRS.
I know,
They'll
they'll
believe
do
anything.
anything to. Mr. Peterson, while Barbara and Mr. Farina are working on that.
Ms. Quinn Davidson, do you have additional information you would like to disseminate?
Well, Mr. Chair, I was thinking, since we're running short on time, that maybe we would talk about next steps and timing and everything while they're working on that. So, for this to be, it was already introduced, but to put the S version on the regular agenda for September 10th. Friday is the deadline, I believe. And then for the,
To put it on the regular agenda
Yeah.
next week with the addendum.
Next week for the addendum. And Meg has, I'm gonna be out next week, Meg has offered, and maybe John's interested too, but in working with Dean to finalize this, to get it on the agenda. But I guess I have a question for the committee, which is, with something that can be this tricky, do we feel comfortable putting it on the agenda? Would we rather just postpone the vote for another 2 weeks and get it on the regular agenda? I wanna make sure there's time for the
So
public
that's
to.
something the committee needs to
So,
consider.
Yeah.
We have a meeting on the 24th, and we
idea.
can do this, Ms. Altel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually think too that we may want to postpone, so we might need to work session this to show the
That
entire
has to
body
change.
just
Yes.
how a ranked choice situation
Good
would
point.
work, so
Yeah.
that everyone sees the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think.
So we don't do that at the meeting.
At the meeting,
The
yeah.
vote first.
All right. So how are we
Nobody
doing
died
on
next
coming up with our vote totals?
Well, we're close.
Yes.
All
Okay,
right.
so.
So should, maybe
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe at the meeting
We'll
on
rework that,
September
but
10th,
In the event of a tie.
should I just postpone for another month? And then
Yeah.
that'll give us time to finalize the language into a work session? Does that sound good?
I think,
Or 2 weeks, or what are people's preferences? I guess we can keep,
Second choice.
the only thing is you postpone that people show up potentially. I don't know that people are showing up for this, but.
Specifically, that was off the one in front of it.
yeah, we can have a committee vote on that if we,
So
The most second place choice, but.
No.
Mr. Gates?
Pretty much
You haven't planned vacancies in the next month, I hope, so
Sorry.
it shouldn't be a
Right.
problem.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Maybe due to the, is it
So
October
there's
10th? Is that the next
two.
meeting after September
Second place.
24th?
No, precinct. So more people for.
8th? 8th, I
Eighth, I
think,
think it
October
is.
8th. You could do
So
that.
Act 2 would be eliminated.
That's 2 meetings, and then we'll.
Okay,
time.
so.
yeah, we could possibly introduce it on the
So here,
24th, and then
in
it'd be on the
this-
agenda on the 8th.
Yeah.
All right.
But this
How does that sound to the members of the committee?
No,
Why does
those are
this?
just the seats.
Make
No objection.
Just
But-
no objection to
So
that?
what happened?
All right, that'll be the plan, then we'll introduce on the 24th and try to get it on the agenda for the first meeting in October.
And it's already been introduced, maybe Dean's gonna say this, yeah, he's gonna say the same thing.
How do you read this
Exposure
version?
from breaking
The item itself, this is Austin, has already been introduced, so for the S version, we could just put it on the
Okay, yeah,
agenda
that's
for the
We
meeting.
will introduce the S version then, all right.
So we look at who
This
voted.
is, this is
This is
disrespectful.
irrelevant now.
Can't follow a conversation when you have a cacophony of noise here.
Yes.
Okay.
Sub-meetings are not creating a situation where
No.
everyone can hear.
Those aren't members of
Who
the
voted
committee.
for
Yeah,
applicant
You
review?
don't have everyone speaking at the same time, or you have those cacophony. I could not follow these conversations.
Good use of cacophony.
Applicant 2 is, well, easy one. So we look at
It
this,
is.
this vote.
Good
Yeah.
copy.
Yeah, it's perfect for the situation.
You know, I'm trying to follow this.
Yes.
So you gotta help me understand. I have applicant 1 and
Yeah,
applicant 2.
right, we don't have
I
time.
have a
We don't
tie,
have time.
and now
So as
I have to
far as
go
the,
to
with our
this
agenda at the
area,
next meeting,
and
we'll
one has to
we'll
vote.
look to get a report from the drafting group
Candidate number 2 is
on the charter changes and also
All right, good.
signature requirements.
Okay.
That would be items.
Someone voted for
in
applicant
our
number
next
2
meeting.
as their first pick.
Okay.
Unless something else comes up between.
And where does it say that here?
That's this part.
Okay, sorry. You know what, let me make a copy of this and they can go through this with me.
You want me to do that, so you
No,
can
I'll
figure
just,
out?
well, it's the only thing we have.
Oh.
Yeah, we're sitting there. Said, here we go. And it actually lasted for 45 seconds or so, that earthquake last night.
Oh, I slept through it.
What?
Really?
4.1. About what, 11 or so?
I was opening my bedroom door and I thought it was broken.
And it came. Wow.
I must have fell asleep earlier last night than I realized.
That's about
No wonder I
the time
woke
I
up
was
at
going to bed.
5:45.
That's interesting.
Who won?
She's
I'm pretty sure that was the third one, but let's double check.
Mr. Chair, I move to extend for 5 minutes.
Second.
Is- All right, we'll extend for 5
Is
more
there a
minutes.
second needed for that?
Yes.
Who did you say?
We're not sure who won.
I know, I just couldn't hear you.
Oh, I think number 3 won. But that's
Mere
just-
speculation.
Yeah.
Don't publish that yet.
Yeah.
And someone actually didn't vote for everyone, which is great, because it'll explain why
Forrest is
you
trying to mess with the system.
need to vote with everybody. Because right now there's 6, and if you don't vote for everybody and all 3 of your candidates get eliminated, then your vote's spoiled.
Some people
Yeah, so they have
voting is
Forrest.
cheap.
Okay, so Matt is saying your numbers worked out perfectly, but what I'm trying,
That was what number didn't vote, for me to vote for everyone. I guess it's sort of the only choice would be just the, you need to redo that.
Yeah, just the one person's vote is spoiled. Considered an invalid ballot.
okay, so now I need to walk through this with the ordinance. So Matt and I thought we were at F2, okay? In the event of a tie, so we're in box number 3, and we're in the event of a tie, the applicant that received the most, and Matt has original second choice votes. I'm telling him, I don't think original is the right term, but I don't quite get that. Shall be deemed the winner if the second choice votes are also tied. Ooh. So that looks like that should be a period though.
I'm not gonna say the language wise.
We've got to use the language. You have to walk through it, and I have to be able to do it, and I'm a business major, so I'm a little confused right now. But if I can't do it, the public can't do it.
Yeah.
That's right.
So what happens next?
So on the first, the initial counting, we have this in the second box. We see the lowest number of votes is 1, and there's 2 people with 1 vote.
The lowest number of votes is 0.
Well, yes, they're gone. They don't matter. So
Okay, well then the first thing we should do is cross off applicant number 5.
Yes,
Okay, so I'm crossing off applicant number 5 in the third box.
yes, so now we're down to 4 candidates left.
Okay,
So applicant 1 and 2 both have 1 vote, so we have to break that tie somehow. So subsection II says that in the event of a tie, 1-1, you look at the next rank of votes, which is second. And there's 3 for applicant 1 and 2 for applicant 2. So applicant 2 would be the next person eliminated per subsection I.
okay, so I have to make sure that that's what the code says here. In the event of a tie, the applicant that received the most second choice votes, it's not shall be deemed the winner. It's not the winner, it's
The
what?
leader?
At shall advance,
Okay,
that is a word that would.
and then should there be a period there?
There, it could be either way. There could be a period, but if that's 3-3, you have to go to the next one. So.
Okay.
Period.
Could I make a suggestion, Mr. Chair?
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
So since we have a limited, thank you, have a limited amount of time, Barbara, could I suggest that we see if we understand the concept, and then we work after this, because we have another month, we're gonna extend it by another month,
Mhm.
then we work to make sure, now that we understand the concept, that the language reflects that, because I think we're gonna run out of time trying to change the wording. And we're gonna have another work session, we're gonna do more, you
Okay.
guys might have missed that,
Okay.
because we talked about it while you were working, but we're gonna take some more time with this. So maybe just go through the example in real words and see how it works.
Okay,
Can I just-
no, you were,
Explain.
I'm doing
Yeah, no, can I
this,
explain?
you needed to,
Yeah.
you can explain to me what
So-
I need to do.
Applicant 1 and 2 are tied,
Yes,
and we need to break that tie. So we look at how many votes they got for the next rank, which is second. So candidate number 1 got 3 second place votes, and candidate 2 got 2 second place votes. So applicant number 2 is eliminated.
okay, I already got to that.
Cross them out.
So
All right.
now I have,
So someone voted for applicant number 2 as their first pick. So we look at the who voted for them as their first pick. In this case, it looks like it would be
Mr. Weddleton,
Mr. Welton. So we look at who he voted for second.
he voted for number 4.
So that one vote for applicant 2 would be transferred to applicant number 4.
So then, right in the bottom box, under applicant 4, I put 3,
Yes.
okay?
Applicant 3 still has 2.
3 still, and I copy that down?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you say it again? Sorry, I was trying to take notes so that we can make sure that we're following the right order in the language, but I missed it. So applicant 1, you were looking at, I got it, 5 and 2 are gone. 1,
So we're in the third box down.
tell me what we're doing with 1.
1 has 1 vote.
I understand. So
That's it.
That's it. That's where we are now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm not behind.
No.
Okay. Somehow.
So they have
Okay.
1, they have 2, we have 3.
So applicant 1 has 1 vote, applicant 3 has 2 votes, applicant 4 has 3 votes. In other words, applicant 4 wins.
No.
Not yet.
Oh.
Applicant 1 has the least amount, so they are now eliminated.
Okay,
So you cross out applicant 1. We
How
look
did-
at,
Yeah, I feel
How
like
did
this is
applicant 4 have
confusing.
3 votes?
they got applicants 2 first place redistributed vote.
Sorry, what?
Applicant 2 was eliminated,
They get my second place.
and applicant 4 was the second pick for.
I think for this to be clear, honestly, it needs to be like super succinct, step by step, and I think it's confusing, the description. So, first step, applicant 5 is eliminated because it has 0 first place votes.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Second step, applicant 2 is eliminated because it's tied for least amount of first place votes, and then you move to the second place votes, and there are fewer because it's 2 versus 3.
Yes.
Applicant 2 is eliminated.
Yes.
Now, you go to applicant 1 because it has 1 first place vote. It's eliminated,
Yes.
okay?
So
Then-
it's down to applicants 3 and 4.
And then we will see So applicant one is now eliminated. Someone voted for them first, so we look at who voted for them first.
Applicant.
Exhausted.
Number. So.
I don't know how you got there.
Right here. So we're seeing who voted for them first.
But you skipped the part of giving the vote, this vote to John, or John's vote to number 4.
Okay. Should we move back 5, 2, and 1 are eliminated? Now we're evaluating 3 and 4, correct?
1, 3, and 4 are still in it. We're going to eliminate number 1. Applicant number 1.
So
Yes.
3 and 4 remain.
Yes.
Okay. Between 3 and 4, they both have the first amount of first place votes, the same amount of first place votes,
Do they?
correct?
Let me check.
They both have 2 first place votes.
Right here.
Yep.
That's correct.
So now we have to try to break that tie.
No, because Matt told me that we eliminated number 2, and when we eliminated number 2,
So we,
2 had 1 first place vote, and we checked who that was.
Okay.
It was John Weddleton voted for number 2, and John's second,
Choice was number 4.
Yes. Second choice was number 4.
so
oh.
So
wait a
we
minute.
were missing
No,
steps.
that's
We
not
didn't
true.
fully describe the steps. I think for the body to really understand this, it needs to
Got
be
it.
real methodical.
Yep, 2.
Like, number
Yep.
1 is eliminated. You take number 1's second choice. You look at who, like, step by step, right? And is
Cookbook.
it just me? I feel like I'm
Nope, cookbook.
confused. Okay.
Cookbook.
We'll get there.
We'll get
Okay,
there, yeah.
so now, Austin, on my paper, I have applicant 1 has 1 vote. Applicant 3 has 2 votes. Applicant 4 has 3 votes.
And that's because applicant 4 got the second place vote of which one?
John Weldon.
Applicant number 2.
Of applicant 2.
Yep.
Okay.
They got the first place vote of applicant 2.
Well, I mean, isn't it an easy way to conceptualize it if you just look at the chart you have here? Applicant 3 has 2, applicant 4 has 2, they both have 1 first place votes, but applicant 4 also has 1 second place vote. That second place vote in the last round is converted into a first place vote, because everybody else has been eliminated.
But you're missing the step of taking the first place vote from applicant 2 when it got eliminated. Because that might be a different person, which we just skipped that. No, we didn't say that, so that's why it's confusing.
And right now, it's actually great. It worked out perfect. Subsection, so right now.
I'm glad you think so. I have no idea what's going on.
So
but-
so right now we're at applicant 1 has 1 vote. Applicant 2 is eliminated. Applicant 3 has 2 votes. Applicant 4 has 3 votes, and applicant 5 is eliminated. So applicant 1 now has the least amount of votes. They are eliminated. Cross
Okay.
them out. We look at who voted for them for their first choice. In this case, it appears to be
Austin.
Austin. So we look at who she voted for second, or who her second choice was.
It was applicant number 2.
It was applicant number 2. But since applicant number 2 is already eliminated, you look at subsection I. In the event the member's second choice or preceding choice was previously eliminated, their first choice vote shall be distributed to their next available ranked applicant.
So that would be-
Since 2 is gone, you skip 2.
3. So Austin voted for applicant 3. And so then applicant 3 is going to get that vote,
Yes.
that redistributed vote.
Yes.
So now applicant 3 has 3 votes.
Yes.
And applicant 4 has 3 votes.
Yes.
Okay.
This worked out. So now, it's 3-3, and we have to break the tie. So that's subsection I. Again. Or I, my apologies. I. So then a tie, applicant most second place votes wins.
So now we're going to go back to the middle box,
Mhm.
and we're going to look at second place votes.
Mhm.
Applicant 3 has 0 votes, and applicant 4 has 1. So applicant 4 wins.
Yes.
And Barbara, for the interpreter, could you explain again how 4 won?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was explaining something else.
Just
I was
last
a little
name.
behind. Applicant 3, for second place votes, applicant 3 has 0 votes, applicant 4 has 1 vote.
Just from this chart, this one, this
Yeah,
chart here.
the second place votes, so, applicant 4 wins.
Barbara
Congratulations, Nick
gets
Miller.
it, that's great.
Well, I got the end, but the middle was a little bit hard.
The mechanics are very confusing.
Yeah, they are. Can I suggest, since it's 1.5, that we keep working on the language and do another work session with everyone?
I think he will
And
be
we might
very-
practice in the meantime.
Can I say he will be very happy to know this, Bill Starr won.
Bill Starr won. Oh, I thought it was Jim Miller. Bill Starr won. Great.
Bill was
Well,
number
I'm-
4?
I'm rethinking this.
Well, I think that that's important to know, who did you vote for? How did you rate that person? Are you okay with that result?
Bill Starr, who in our actual elect, I think got 1 vote.
To be fair, I just wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so maybe I should have tried to make it more. This time, I should have put mine real hard.
I just noticed
Oh, I
that.
just did 1, 2, 3. I thought we were only supposed to do 1, 2, 3. Sorry, I'm the one that
We're all
messed
trying
up
to
that
figure it
then.
out.
So the reason.
So, cause, yeah,
The reason you would, in this setting, it's very important, because there's only most likely 10 of you voting, you have to rank everyone, because if you don't, and say your 3 picks are eliminated, your vote's spoiled.
You don't have to rank everyone.
You
If you
do.
do not rank everyone, your chances of your vote counting are lower.
Yes. Yes, you do not have to, but if you don't,
You may have to, we don't know that
yeah,
legally. but
legally, yeah.
Your, that's an assumption.
But functionally,
Yeah.
if you don't rank everyone, your vote could not count in the end. Because you vote for someone that lost. Like a normal plurality election.
yeah, that's,
So, Mr.
Could end up
Chair,
that way.
I'm gonna recommend that we do this again, because I think if we practice and do it again and again, and you should vote for different people so we can see what different results we get, I think that will be more meaningful, continue to be more meaningful. And I can practice.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, since we're gonna extend it by a month, we're gonna work on the language a little bit, but what we could do is, John and Meg and I, and Matt, if you'd like, it's helpful, and Barbara and Dean, we could do this ourselves a couple times, so that we're all good at explaining it, and then we could bring back to the full body for a work session with the correct language before we go. Does that sound good?
That sounds reasonable to me.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your help,
Ms.
Matt.
Jones?
Mr. Chair, I do have one other item on your ballot or on the agenda, and this is the ballot envelope information. We do want to go to print on the new envelopes before your next meeting, so I'm going to pass these out to you. We've run this by the Ethics and Elections Committee, through the Title 28 redrafting committee. There is no code requirement for the signature information. So it isn't a code change that I need. I just want your input. But you can take this with you and get back to me if you'd like.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at this, and any questions, we'll email Barbara. And do that within the next couple of days, Barbara?
You can have a week.
A week.
You can have a week or,
All right, so members of the committee, let's take a look at this and let Barbara know what we think in the next week.
I just want to let you know that I think the group feels strongly that this is a move in the right direction. Patty Wilcox and John Weddleton came to your first meeting, and we have some similar concerns about the signatures on the ballot envelopes where people are using a witness, and we think we've really tightened this up. I'm not going to get to, we're not selling ballots to people out of state yet, But we think this is a good start.
Does this conceal voter signature?
Mr. Dunbar, through the chair, that would be a separate discussion, not yet. We are not there. I will ask our vendor what that will cost. And we'll ask that. We don't have the equipment to automatically remove the flap that would be over the top. Now, I do think that there is gonna be one change, and it won't be a window envelope. They don't know exactly what that's gonna look like. So we'll get the cost, and so it's gonna totally change next year, because it's not gonna be a window. But I just don't know what this is gonna look like yet.
Okay. I got one thing for you. Illegally to falsely sing.
Oh, I love to sing, but I'll make that sign, okay?
All right, I noticed that myself.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've gone through our agenda. Maybe it's time for public comments.
You need to extend the meeting because you're 12 minutes over without extension.
All right, let's extend the meeting for 3 more minutes.
Move to extend. Second
All right,
minutes.
thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Eugene Calhaven. I represent myself. I live in Matthew Valley. Follow the public process. The public process is an appropriate decision made by the governing body for right of public interest. I was not planning to speak here at this meeting, although, note, everyone in this room came after me as far as monitoring the elections, involved in elections, as far as being on the assembly. Mind you, I came in April 4, 2012, but there is a common repeat. This meeting where I'm speaking, and the previous meeting of this meeting, Assembly Member Dunbar leaves for not giving my comments. That's consistent. So, when people are speaking in any room, in a public meeting, the public needs to hear, you need to hear. But what we had here is a situation that reminds me of the April 3rd, 2012 election. Upstairs in the mayor's conference room, there was a review of the process of what happened. And you had a round table up there, and individual, I believe commissioners or whatever, were interviewing at the same time and asking individually. You had about 5 or 6 subgroups. And how did we ever find out what was said in that room during that election of April 3rd, 2012, in that review? That's where I came in and said about the cacophony of noise, having conversations that were conflicting and making it impossible for people to speak. Now, what's more appropriate is if you needed time to wait for something, you either have those parties outside discussing it or call for a break, a simple break of time, and let the party who was working out in this meeting figure out what needed to be done and before they made that presentation. But that did not happen. And the end result was, we're talking about election issues, and it was basically very distracting. And if anyone listens to the tape of this meeting, they would have a real hard time who's speaking and who's not speaking and whatever. So I just end with that, and also note this is sub-related. As assembly members, you realize many of your residents have property out in the valley. Now, Thursday and Friday of last week, 2 meetings I attended Sunday out there, different locations. And yesterday, and I plan to be going over to the Y near Southkeeping tonight. None of those meetings have been noted for the public by the Matsu Borough, not one. You, as Assembly Member of Administration, I applaud you what you've done, as I said last week, in dealing with emergency and let the public be connected. But we still have, there's a state emergency up there, and there's a borough emergency up there. And there's also great concern about what's going on down in the peninsula and how, but in reference to the peninsula though, they do a very good job cleaning up into the borough. You look at their website about connecting with the people in this very frustrating situation. And thank you, my time's up.
All right, this committee meeting is adjourned.